The number one job of a CEO, to set strategy. But you don't have a strategy unless you've named it. Let me come back to that. First of all, I want to welcome you here from Warsaw, Poland. I'm in for a corporate connections event all day tomorrow with our coaching partner, Carol Popa. And right behind me is the beautiful square here in central Warsaw. Now, back to our topic. It was Hubert Joly in his book, The Heart of Business. And by the way, you might recognize Hubert is the CEO who was able to turn around Best Buy during a time when Circuit City had just failed. Amazon's coming on. They are literally a category killer. The recession has hit, the Great Recession. Over the next 7 years, Hubert was able to 10x the valuation of Best Buy from $11 to $110. And in that book, The Heart of Business, he said something really critical. And that is, look, you don't have a strategy if you haven't named it. And so when he got there, the first thing he did is he said, we've got to renew blue. That was the name of their strategy. And he laid out what were the 5 strategic pillars that they needed to focus on in order to get that accomplished. Once they did, they then set a next strategy that allowed them to really grow and get that 10x valuation. You might have noticed last year, Warren Buffett went all in a company that over the last 15 years, their stock outperformed the 3 A's. That is Apple, Amazon, and Alphabet. And that company, Domino's Pizza. And I think part of it is their CEO recently stated their strategy, which is hungry for more. Even the analysts, there's a piece that I've been pointing to where we might even put it here on this video, where he talks deeply about what are the 4 strategic pillars of Domino's. And by the way, hungry for more means that we want more stores, we want more profits, we want more customers, and more importantly, the word more, and look, it may sound a little cheesy, excuse the pun, but the word more spells out what are the 4 strategic pillars that they are focused on. And we're going to list those here right now. And here's what's beautiful about it. As you're managing by wandering around, you can walk up to folks and say, hey, what it is that you're working on, and hey, does that align with one of the 4 things that we're focused on if we're going to drive the value of Domino's? Reminds me of somebody I hosted over the many years, that MIT program, and that was Jim McCann, the founder of 1-800-Flowers. And Jim was famous for having all over his facility these signs that would say, will it sell more flowers? And again, as he would lead by wandering around, he'd walk up to somebody and say, what are you working on? Well, is that going to sell more flowers? And he'd walk up to somebody else and say, what are you working on? But will that sell more flowers? And they could turn to Jim and say, hey, Jim, what are you working on? Is that going to sell more flowers? And by the way, many significant companies do that. One of the things I've always admired about Mark Zuckerberg is January of every year, he sets what is the theme. He names the strategy for Meta. 2 years ago, 2023, it was the year of efficiency. By the way, I want you to see it doesn't have to be really fancy. But even again, the analyst knew, and as he was sharing his Q&A with Mark every Thursday and wandering around, his question is, hey, what are you working on? Is that getting us more efficient? Last year, it was all in AI. And again, as you're wandering around, hey, whatever it is you're working on, what are you doing in order to add AI to what it is? And then here at the beginning of 2025, he announced it again. It was essentially FO, Facebook Original. He wants to kind of go back to a lot of what were the original kind of ideas and purpose of Facebook. In fact, he even recently announced, I think maybe tongue in cheek at the congressional hearings, that if he had his way, he would like to kind of erase everybody's folks that they've got signed up and say, let's go back to our original intention, which is they're supposed to be friends that you are friending on Facebook. And so those companies from Facebook, Meta, to Domino's, to ours this year is all in AI. We decided to copy Meta's from last year. We've got 4 then strategic pillars around what it is that we want to do with AI here this coming year. My question to you is, hey, you may have a strategy, but let's give it a name. Keep scaling.